You got me into this, you get me out. What you are we talking about? It doesn't matter. It's energy. It's intention. The you could be the royal you. You, God, got me into this. Please, you get me out. Please, you get me out. It could be you, soul. You, my greater you, the greater me, the greater self. I've used this clause. I like to call it a clause. I've used this invocation, this request, this question, this statement. Well, it's not really a question, it's more of a command. I've used it in a million different ways. I have used it as a question. You know, will you get me out of here? Please. The way I like to play with it the most, and that's the key part, is to play with it in the moment, in a way, in that situation, wherever you're at, whatever level of awareness you're at, whatever you means to you at that moment, to play with that whole situation and to use this approach, this attitude, in a way that makes sense to you at that moment, that you can recognize, that you can resonate with at that moment, and then it works. So it's really helpful to be very flexible, fluid in the way you use this, the way you play with it. The way I like to play with it a lot, that works in most cases, is I conjure up the scenario, the story. My story is, and I'm going to stick to it, that there is a clause in everyone's soul contract, including my own soul contract, that there is a clause. It's usually on the first page. Of course, it's a scroll, so you scroll way down. I guess everything's on the first page. So you scroll down on this scroll, and at the very, very bottom, in very fine print, it's reading the fine print on your soul contract. How many of you have ever read the fine print in your soul contract? Well, very down there at the very, very bottom, it says there's a clause which you can invoke at any time, and that clause reads that Spirit, Essence, God, the universe, create situations for your spiritual journey, adventure, and you have the right, you have the ability, you have the power at any moment to say, well, we've got ourselves into this, I've got myself into this, you got me into it, the greater you, God, the universe, you get me out. So you have the ability and the right at any moment to request, pray, command that the depth and range and wisdom of your soul and the universe and the harmony of it all arrange for you to shift the situation you're in, to change the form, and to move to the next step, the next level. From the personality point of view, if very often, I mean mostly when I invoke this clause, I'm identifying with my smaller self, my ego self, the personality, and often as victim. So it comes out like, I'm invoking the clause, you got me into this, you get me out, God, or soul, or universe. And that's okay. It's all a story. So you're playing with your story, you're playing with your beliefs, you're playing with the state of empowerment or victimhood or consciousness or awareness that you're at the moment. So what I like to do is just say, okay, the big picture has gotten me into this situation for a reason, for a purpose, for an adventure, for a learning experience, or simply for an experience. And now, you know what? I'm done with it. I'm ready to move on. I'll do whatever. I believe, I feel, in my experience, that attitude is helpful, that you combine this prayer or request with the attitude that you're willing to do whatever is necessary. You're willing to make whatever changes, you're willing to let go of whatever's necessary for things to move to the next step. I first discovered this clause when I was blind. I've actually used it earlier than that, intuitively, instinctively as a kid. And it worked then in many, many situations, social situations, physical ones. But the time I remember the most when I really woke up and was aware of this power, this ability, this portal, was when I was 19. I was a filmmaker and I went completely blind, and Western medicine couldn't help me. And so I was left on my own, living at home in my childhood house in the mountains of Pennsylvania. Both parents were gone working, and they tried everything. They couldn't help me. They had no more suggestions, but I couldn't see it all. And so my father flew me around the country to many experts and eye clinics, and nobody could help. So I was really left to my own devices. And what I did is I just tried everything, and I changed everything. I changed what I ate, how I lived, my lifestyle, exercising, my attitude especially, my language. I quit swearing, I quit complaining. I just tried everything that I'd ever heard anyone try to get out of any situation that was really uncomfortable. I tried plotting, convincing, begging, making a deal, negotiating with God. And at one point, after 2 months, I did get my eyesight back. And just before I did, the day before, I realized on some level I hit this deeper awareness. Now, at that age, at 19, I wasn't that clear what it was, but I had this sense that I had something to do with this. But at the level that I had something to do with creating this predicament, blindness, and that at that level, I also was one with something else. I felt bigger. I felt connected with something else, whether it's God or just life force or spirit or the universe or nature. I felt backup. I felt that I had somebody helping me at that point. And so it was a little bit like, well, we got ourselves into this. How can we get out? And I had the sense that there obviously had to be a way out because I got into it, so there has to be a way out. And whatever got me into it would know how to get me out. So really, invoking this clause, you might say it's saying, well, whatever got me into this situation right now that feels restrictive, limiting, uncomfortable, I don't like it. Whatever got me into this has the ability and the wisdom and the knowing to get me out. And so you're invoking that aspect of your consciousness, that aspect of universal consciousness, that awareness, that knowledge, that wisdom, the skill of, hey, however you got me into this, then you could reverse engineer it and get me out. Whatever you need to do. And part of that deal, and part of the element I feel that's always made it work, is that I do drop into that state of being willing to go along with whatever's necessary. So I'm willing to let go, make whatever changes. I've really let go of my whole story and say I'm willing to allow everything to change, everything to be new and different, if I could possibly, allow life to be a little more enjoyable at this moment. And when I invoke this clause, especially when I do it playfully, I do it from my center, I do it with passion, with authenticity, with heart, with creativity, that it works every single time. There might be a delay of a few minutes or a few hours, but within a few hours and definitely within a few days, whatever situation I'm in, whatever pickle I'm in, predicament, problem I'm in, it will clear up. It will move to a new stage. So I basically say, well, okay, I'm invoking the clause. And also just saying I'm invoking the clause in my soul contract acknowledges and takes you to that level where you're acknowledging your awareness that you have a soul contract, that you have a soul. And when you're at that level of acknowledging and being in that awareness and acknowledgement of soul, right then you're in the oneness. Right then you're one with God, universal awareness, your higher self. And of course, at that point, when you invoke, get me out of this, to yourself, to God, however you're saying it, at that level, you have the ability, you have the wisdom of how to lift yourself out of that restraint, that limitation. So I'm sharing this as a fun, playful, and very, very effective, practical way of navigating yourself through the ups and downs, the hurly-burly of life. And so anytime I feel myself being constrained, whether it's a physical ailment, in a financial situation, or a social awkward situation, or a career, or any situation at all, that I'm just not finding a normal or a usual or a regular way of a solution or some way to resolve the situation, then I usually just take a deep breath, let go, relax, and invoke the clause. Hey, you got me into this, you get me out. Give it a shot. Thanks.